Exchange trade funds, aka ETFs, are some of the absolute best investment vehicles if you're looking for the highest potential of return with the lowest risk possible. They are a great way for you to buy multiple companies under one ticker. So today I'll share with you what are the 5 best Canadian ETFs to buy right now in 2024. Plus, at the end of the video, I'll share with you what would be my asset allocation in every single ETFs if I had to build my own portfolio with all of these 5 ETFs. Without further ado, let's take a look at my pick number 1. Starting out with a fund that is tracking the overall Canadian market, which is the iShares S&P TSX 60 Index ETF with the ticker XIU. As I just mentioned, this ETF seeks to track the performance of the S&P TSX 60 index, which is an index composed of 60 large cap companies located on the Canadian market. It is why among its biggest holdings, you can find companies such as the Big 5 banks, Shopify, Enbridge, and CN. So this fund is a great representation of the overall Canadian economy, where you can find that the financial sector by itself represents about 35% of the total assets of the fund. And after, you have the energy, the industrials, and the technology sector. This fund could represent an excellent option if you're looking for an ETF that invests in stable companies that tend to give higher dividend income, since it is actually giving some great quarterly income distributions to their shareholders. Plus, if you would have invested $10,000 in XIU 10 years ago, this would now be worth over $12,500 right now, or an average annual return of about 8% per year. Add to this, you can expect to pay some annual management fees of about 0.18% per year, or $18 per $10,000 invest in that fund. Add to this, Morningstar is ranking this fund as being above the average in terms of the potential return that it is able to achieve compared to the average fund of its category, while having the same level of risk. So it is definitely a great fund to have for many Canadians to hold potentially in your TFSA if you're looking for great tax benefits. But wait until you see my other picks. For the second ETF on my list, I've picked a fan favorite, which is the Vanguard S&P 500 Index ETF with the ticker VFV. After tracking the overall Canadian market, this ETF will help you to track the overall US market by highlighting the performance of the 500 largest American companies by market cap. It is why among the largest holdings of this fund, you can find well-known companies such as Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Nvidia, Alphabet, and Meta. And so with no surprise, the technology sector comes as the largest sector of this fund with about 30% of the total assets of it. And after, you can find the financials, the healthcare, and the consumer discretionary. So you can understand that by buying this ETF, you are investing in companies that tend to be more volatile compared to the first ETF, where over the last 10 years, your total annualized return would have been of about 14% per year, where your first initial $10,000 invest 10 years ago will now be worth over $38,000. All of this while paying some mere management fees of about 0.09% per year, or $9 per $10,000 invest. Add to this, Morningstar is ranking this ETF as having way more potential of return while keeping the same level of risk compared to the average funds of its category. And even if many companies that are found in this ETF are considered as growth companies, well, you'll still earn some great quarterly income distributions from VFV. Personally, it is one of my favorite Canadian ETFs, where I am buying some shares of VFV pretty much every single month. But now, if you're looking for a more conservative approach where you want to reduce the overall risk in your portfolio, well, you could opt for the BMO Aggregate Bond Index ETF with the ticker ZAG. On its side, this fund seeks to track the performance of the FTSE Canada Universe Bond Index, which is an index composed of different types of Canadian investment grade fixed income. This includes fixed income securities such as bonds from the Canadian government, as well as from the province of Canada and from different corporations. An important aspect to take in consideration is from the term investment grade, which represents something with some super low risk and and so with some super low volatility. It is why this type of ETF compared to another one such as VFV won't tend to fluctuate a lot in value, which means that you won't become a millionaire with this one, but instead it will help you to preserve your capital by limiting your overall risk. It is why over the last 10 years, by investing $10,000 in that fund, it would now be worth about $12,500 or an average annualized return of slightly over 2% per year. But on your side, just like VFV, by investing in this ETF, you could expect to pay some mere annual management fees of about 0.09% per year or $9 per $10,000 invest. And so by buying this ETF, you would hold over 1,500 fixed income securities, which are mainly Canadian government bonds. And as you can see, the maximum allocation that is allocated to every single fixed income securities is about 1% per security. The advantage to invest in these types of securities such as bonds is that they tend to have some reverse correlation with the interest rates, which means that when the interest rates will be super high, well, the price of bonds will be super low and vice versa. So when the price of bonds will be super high, well, the interest rates will be super low. And so right now, while the interest rates are super high and that they are expected to slightly start to slow down over the next couple of years, well, it means that usually the price of bonds should continue to increase during that period. At the same time, the great advantage to invest in ZAG is that it will give you some great monthly income distribution with a distribution yield that is close to 3.50% at the moment. It means that this type of fund is optimal for older people that are looking for steady and great monthly income distribution from these coupons. Now for the fourth ETF on my list, I've decided to go with an international fund, which is the Vanguard FTSE Developed All Cap Except North America Index ETF with the ticker VIU. On its side, this fund invests directly or indirectly in companies of all sizes, so small, mid, and large cap companies that are located in every developed market except Canada and the US. It is why among the 3,800 holdings of this fund, you can find international companies such as Novo Nordisk, Nestle, ASML, Samsung, and Toyota. Among all of these businesses, you find that the majority of them either come from the Pacific or Europe, with countries such as Japan, the United Kingdom, and France well represented in this ETF. In terms of the sectoral distribution, we find great diversity among all of the different sectors of this fund, where the industrials will come as the largest sector of it, and slightly after you find the financials, the consumer discretionary, and the healthcare. Since the inception of this fund in 2015, by investing $10,000 in that ETF, you would now have over $15,500 or an average annual return of about 5.50% per year. Plus, by investing in VTI, you can expect to pay some annual management fees of about 0.23% per year or $23 per $10,000 invest. Add to this fund is also giving some great quarterly income distributions to their different shareholders. And on its side, Morningstar is ranking this ETF as being in the average for both the potential return as well as the level of risk compared to the average funds of its category. So overall, I would say that the best benefit to invest in this type of fund is basically to achieve some great global diversification in your portfolio by having access to different companies that you wouldn't have in your classical ETFs. But finally, if you don't want to have the trouble to pick which ETFs will you want to have in your portfolio and which one do you want to avoid, well, you could opt for a global stock market ETF that will track the entire market, such as the iShares Core Equity ETF with the ticker XEQT. So this ETF is basically an all-in-one where it is tracking companies of all sizes located in every single market in the world. It is pretty much the same ETF as its Vanguard equivalent, with one of the main difference being that it has some slightly lower management fees, and so it is why I've decided to present this one to you today. Plus, one of the main particularity of XEQT is that it won't be holding all the different individual stocks one by one, but instead they'll be holding a few of the BlackRock ETFs that will be tracking all the overall market, where they hold over 9,000 stocks in those funds. It makes that in terms of the assets allocation, you find that the S&P US Total ETF represents about 45% of the total assets of this fund. After, you have the developed market as well as the Canadian market ETF that that represent about 25% each of the total assets of it. And finally, the emerging markets represent about 5% of the total assets. And so with no surprise, you can find that the majority of the companies found in this ETF comes from either the US or Canada. On your side, if you would have invested $10,000 in that fund at its inception on the market in 2018, this will now be worth over $15,000 or an average annualized return of about 10% per year. Plus, by buying XEQT, you could expect to pay some annual management fees of about 0.20% per year or $20 per $10,000 invest. On its side, Morningstar is ranking this ETF as being above the average when it comes to the potential of return while having the same level of risk compared to the average funds of its category. And on your side, by having XEQT in your portfolio, you could expect to receive some great quarterly income distribution from it. So there you have it. Those are 5 of the absolute best Canadian ETFs that you can find right now on the stock market. Personally, if I was a beginner looking to invest all of my assets in these 5 funds, I would start by investing about 40% of them in XEQT, and after I'd put about 25% in VFV, 15% in XIU, and I'd put 10% in both VTY and ZAG. But now on your side, if you want to find what are the best individual stocks that could be interesting to add in your portfolio for 2024, well, check out the video that's going to be right over here, and I will see you soon. Peace!